Hi there, thanks so much for tuning in. In today's video, we'll be building a clone of the infamous sonic wave Theremin. We'll begin the video by preparing the enclosure, and afterwards we'll breadboard the circuit. Finally, we'll transition that into a PCB and test out the unit. So I hope you enjoy the video, you learn a lot, and without further ado, let's begin. So I prepared an enclosure which is quite similar to the sonic wave, with just some subtle differences. So here we see the width is 85.5 centimeters, the height is 60 centimeters, and the depth is 170 centimeters. In comparison, the sonic wave width is 90 centimeters, the height is 54 centimeters, and the depth is 160 centimeters. So taking that into consideration, there will be some minor adjustments to where we will drill our holes for the antenna mounts, the adjust knob, and finally the output jack. Okay, starting with the antenna mounts, specifically the top mount here, I've measured from the center of the hole to the back of the unit as 1.3 centimeters, and from the top of the unit to the center of the hole as 1.75 centimeters. So we will do the same accordingly for this. As for the bottom mount, I've measured 1.3 centimeters from the back and 1.3 centimeters from the bottom. For the enclosure we're using, as you can see on the inside, we have mounts here for the back panel. So to avoid hitting one of the mounts, I'll be doing 1.8 centimeters from the bottom to accommodate for that. Okay, so moving on for our variable capacitor, otherwise our adjust knob, I measured 8 centimeters from the side of the unit and 2.8 centimeters from the bottom. So to adjust for our extra 10 centimeters here, we will consider 8.5 centimeter opposed to 8. And finally, for the output jack, I measured 1.75 centimeters from the front of the unit to the hole and 2.5 centimeters from the bottom. So let's go ahead and mark where we will be drilling our holes on the unit for the output jack, the adjust knob, and our antenna mounts. Okay, I finished marking the enclosure. I would like to note that for the antenna mounts, when considering 1.3 centimeters from the back of the unit, I removed the back panel, and this was to be more consistent with the sonic wave. So now that we have our unit marked, let's go ahead and determine which drill bits we're going to use for each component. Regarding the drill bits, for the antenna mount, I'm using a 3mm by 10 iron pan head screw. For that, I'll be using a 3.5mm drill bit. Next, we have a 20 picofarad variable capacitor. This has a 6mm shaft, but if we look closely at the base, we can see that there is roughly 7mm in diameter. And I plan to glue this into the enclosure, and I would like it as flat as possible. So to accommodate for that, I'll be using an 8mm drill bit. Finally, I have a Switchcraft stereo jack, which has a 9.533mm mounting hole diameter. For that, I'll be using a 10mm drill bit. Okay, so we drilled holes for our antenna mounts, the adjust knob, and our output jack. If we look on the inside, we can see that the adjust knob hole we created aligns perfectly with the markings on the case. And don't be alarmed if you notice that the mounts within the enclosure do not align. That's just the design of this enclosure. Next, we'll be attaching the antenna mounts to the side of the enclosure. Here I'm using little fuse 01210002Z fuse clips. These are earless and have a mounting hole ideal for our clone. Using a pair of needle nose pliers, we can bend our ring terminal outwards, which we will be attaching to the top mount relative to the adjust knob. This will make it easier later when we'll be soldering directly onto the ring terminal. We can then attach our screw with our fuse clip, add the ring terminal, and finally the nut. We can then use a screwdriver and a 6mm socket wrench to tighten the screw. We can then do the same for the bottom mount, utilizing a washer opposed to the ring terminal. After we're done, we can press against our mounts. After we're done with that, we can press our fuse clips inwards, as such, and then test our antenna. And for this antenna, I will be removing the bottom mount using a screwdriver. And there we have it. So next, we'll skip adding the adjust knob directly to the enclosure and focus on adding the switchcraft output jack. So next, I would like to add the plastic battery holder to the enclosure. And for this, there are a few options we can take. One, we can attach the battery holder to the back panel using 2.6 millimeter countersunk screws as such. For this video, however, inspired by the screw upper, which was developed by Electro Harmonics as a sonic wave Theremin clone, I would like to add the battery holder directly to the enclosure as such. In order to attach the battery holder in this manner, we can utilize double-sided tape. Using a pair of scissors, I was able to cut an appropriate amount of double-sided tape. Now we can remove the film and add to our unit. Next, again inspired by the screw upper, we can utilize plastic mounting brackets to mount our PCB onto the enclosure. For this video, I'll be using the ICB86 Universal Circuit Board. In order to allow the PCB to fit in this orientation, I needed to cut two sides of one of the adhesive standoffs and one side of the other. Next, we can set aside the PCB and move on to breadboarding our circuit. Okay, so let's begin breadboarding the circuit. So what I like to do is, I like to start with the variable oscillator or antenna. So what I'm using for the transistors, so originally it calls for Delco DS26 transistors, but those are very difficult to get a hold of. So I use Hitachi 2SB155 transistors. So if we look on the side here, we can see that there's a triangle, and that indicates the collector. And then next to that, we have the base here, and then the emitter. So if we look here, we can see that the positive terminal of the 9-volt connects to the emitter of both transistors. So we'll go ahead and attach that, the emitter, to the positive terminal. And next we can see that the base connects to a 0.001 microfarad 1 meg resistor. So for that, we can prepare that as well as such. And for those new to breadboarding, basically every slot here has continuity. So if we were to test with a multimeter, we would get continuity between these 3 pins here and these 2 pins here. And then for this whole row here, we have our positive. When we connect our battery, for example, we'll just go ahead and do that now. We have continuity between, in this case, the positive terminal of our 9-volt and every slot here. And now we have continuity on the second row for the negative lead. Okay, so moving on. If we look at our IFT here, So this IFT coil that I'm using, the start of the primary is on pin 3 and the start of the secondary is on pin 4. So here the pin out is pin 1, 2, 3, 4. We skip 5 and we have 6. So when you're trying to figure out which one is primary, which is secondary, it's easy to think here we have 3 pins, so that's our primary. Here we have 2, that's our secondary. So when we look here, we see that the start of the primary is connected with our collector of our transistor and our antenna. So we will want, in this case, the start, so pin 3, to be connected to this collector. Let's see, and then additionally, so the sonic wave and the screw upper use a similar grounding scheme where if you look here, you can see that the end of the primary is connected to the start of the secondary, which goes to ground. So in that case, let's see here. So pin 1 here connects to pin 4, which goes to ground. So here we can place our IFT coil as such. And just to double check, so 1, 2, 3. So pin 3 goes to our collector, which we can go ahead and plug in here. And the other thing is that we will want, let's see, in this case, to use a jumper because we need to ground the primary end here with the secondary start. So I find it helpful to do this. Just double check. Yeah. Okay. And so for the antenna, what I'm going to do is have the antenna right here. So I'm just going to use this clip here, and I'll just clip directly to the collector. And next, we would like for the end of the secondary to connect to our parallel 1 meg and 0.001 microfarad capacitor there. So we can use some jumpers. Just like that, to give us continuity. And I would like to note that, so originally when you get these IFT coils, there will be a tab here. There will be 2 tabs usually for the shield can. And what you can do is you can just use some needle nose pliers, and for example, Electro Harmonics just took these off. And so I've done that as well. And that will allow you to be able to slide the IFT into the breadboard and the PCB that we'll be using. Okay, so now that we have that, let's see here. It's 3:30. Okay, so we can move on to the next IFT, the transistor first. So again, triangle indicates our collector. We want the emitter to go to the positive 9-volt terminal. And actually, let's go ahead and just let me prepare the resistor. And capacitor. So similarly, our base will go and connect with the resistor and capacitor. And then if we look here, we can see that the end of the primary connects with the collector, which goes to our variable capacitor. And the start of the secondary connects with the resistor and capacitor. So again, we need to be mindful that the primary start, the ground, connects to ground by going through the secondary end here in this case. So if we look here, in this case, pin 1 here, pin 3 will connect to pin 6. So we will put the IFT in this orientation. And again, similarly, we'll need a jumper. So if we decide here, here we go. And now just to double check, so we have pin 4 here, and pin 4 connects to our resistor and capacitor, and the collector will connect over here. So I think what I'll do is just put the collector here. Actually, let's see, can we, I guess if we move this right here, and let's just move over the resistor and capacitor. There we go. So our collector is connected. This will go to our variable capacitor. So I'll go ahead and prepare that. And now we would like pin 4 to connect to our resistor capacitor. So let's go ahead and get that ready. Okay. There we go. Connected, and see, this will go to ground, so we can go ahead and prepare that. So I'll just clip that onto the sleeve of the switchcraft. And next, we'll save that for later. So we have a capacitor here connected to our positive 9 volt, and which goes to ground. So we'll go ahead and actually I'll go ahead and I think what I'll do is attach that here, add a jumper from over here. So that we have continuity between the two rows. There we go. So we've taken care of that. And let's see here. So let's see, the 0.01 capacitor will connect with the tip of our output. So I'll just go ahead and put that over here for now. Then we have connected to that a 0.001 microfarad capacitor going to ground. So we'll go ahead and just prepare that here for now. We also have the 1N60C. So here I'm using 1N60. And our anode side is the side which does not have the black bands. And this is our cathode side, which does. So in this case, we look at the line here, our cathode connects to this 82 k ohm resistor. So we need to be mindful of that. Otherwise, for any of the capacitors in this circuit, there's no polarity. Same with the resistors, obviously, but yeah, we need to be mindful of the direction here of the diode. So we'll go ahead and connect the anode side there. And now we'll have an 82 k ohm resistor going to ground. So I'll try to designate this row here as ground. Okay. And there's something else we need to be mindful of. So as mentioned here, the cathode side of the diode right here connects to one lug of each IFT shield can. So what we can do is just prepare wire here for now. And I'll just do this for now. Just for now. Okay, so we've taken care of that. Let's set these aside. So now so the other thing is, in the original sonic wave, there is a switch on the back of the unit between the negative terminal of the battery and the 330 ohm resistor, which goes to ground. But in this schematic, what I'm going to do is use the stereo jack as a switch using a mono instrument cable. So because of that, we're going to have the 330 ohm resistor, connect to the ring of our stereo jack. So we'll just do this for now. And the ring is right here. Okay. And then, okay, so we can take care of, now we have our ground here, so we can put everything together. I'll just connect everything at this row here for ground. Let me just set those aside for the time being. Okay, ground connected. Not the best color scheme, but so let's see here. Check, we have, oh, collector came out, need to be careful. Okay, and okay, so now we need, I'll just use this here. We need to connect ground to our sleeve. So I'll use this here. Connect to sleeve. There we go. And we need to connect to the tip for our output. What I'll do is just connect this to the 0.01 microfarad capacitor. There we go. Also, what I would recommend is on your variable capacitor to put the knob on when testing. Just makes it easier. There we go. Now we can, there we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and test and see what sounds are produced, if any. There we go. Okay, so when I'm using the antenna, I'm not getting response. Double check. There we go. Just a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to wait a little bit and make sure it doesn't drift. And if everything sounds good, then I think we can transition this into a PCB. Okay, so now we can begin the transition from the breadboard to our PCB. And again, I'm using the ICB86 from Sun Hayato. And to save some time earlier in the day, I went ahead and created a layout for this PCB. So I'll explain the colors as we go. So to start, here the blue, green, and red indicates the collector, base, and emitter respectively for our transistor. So again, the triangle indicates the collector, the green indicates base, and again, the red indicates the emitter. So what we'll need to do is, you may have noticed, but there are two strips in the middle. There's one for the positive 9-volt terminal, and then below that we have one for ground. So what I'll want to do is, I want the wire for our emitter of each transistor to connect to the strip for the plus 9-volt. And then here, so we're looking at this from, in this case, normally we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, but here, this is for once we put our IFT in, here we have 1, 2, 3. So 3, again, is the start of our primary, which connects to our collector of our transistor and also the antenna. So here is our collector. So I'm going to also connect that down to that, and we'll go ahead and begin soldering. So what I'll actually do, it looks like we have a little extra slack there for this. So I'm going to cut some of that slack. Set that aside. So I've set my soldering iron to 360 degrees Celsius. Actually, what I'll do first is, in order to stabilize the IFT, I'll go ahead and solder the ground pin. In that case, and the other ground pin as well. Okay, so according to the schematic, I just soldered pins 1 and pins 4 of the IFT. And now, just okay. So now I'm going to solder that collector. Let's see if we can. I'll solder here as well. One second. Go ahead and use some gloves for this. The wire is getting hot. Here we go. Okay. Here we would like for the emitter to connect to, in this case, the left strip. Actually, what we could probably do is bend that. So I'm going to use my needle nose pliers. Just bend the tip there. Oops. So I have it diagonal. Need to be careful. Here we go. Okay. And our base connects to our resistor. So what I would like to do is transition the capacitor. So here you have markings for the capacitor. And for the resistor. Actually, I'll use the glove when soldering if necessary. So the only thing with this is we need to be careful that we do not hit. Oh, okay. So we can actually see start the resistor here. Here we go. I apologize. So we can place that there. Then we should not be hitting the IFT can. So I'll show you that. Go ahead and solder the resistor in. First. And actually, we will want that to connect to our base. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and use the capacitor leg. Go ahead and cut that. Actually, I'll cut the maybe I'll solder the transistor base in first. Then we will solder the capacitor. There we go. Now we would like, in this case we have pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. So pin 6 connects to the capacitor and resistor. So similarly, I'll go ahead and solder the resistor first. And then we will move that leg of the capacitor over so that we're hitting pin 6. Or actually, let me go ahead and cut this leg. And by the way, I would recommend to keep these because, as we noted, the cathode side of the diode will connect to the shield can. There we go. Go ahead and cut that. Okay. Okay, so now we can move on to the next transistor. So again, our collector, base, emitter, collector blue, base green, emitter red. Yeah, to be honest, I like this height much better than this. So I may end up trying to configure this one over here later. But for now, again, so in this case, if you look here, pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and here pin 3. So in this case, pin 3 going to ground, which again, as I mentioned, I've added the jumper here, which will create a connection between pin 3 and, in this case, pin 6. So we'll go ahead and first solder the ground pins in. Oh, so it looks like I did not remove one of the tabs there. There we go. I think I can. Nick it off. There we go. Okay. Here we go. Oh, actually, I'm going to move this to the back here because I will be connecting, for example, the antenna here and the variable capacitor here. So we'll go ahead and solder the transistor in. Similar to before, we'll cut the leg here. Okay. Similar to before, we can add our resistor and capacitor. And we will want those similarly to connect to base, or at the base of the transistor. And also to pin 4, which again here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll do the same as before, where we solder the transistor in first. I'm sorry, the resistor in first. Save that. Okay. 102, 0.001 microfarad. Okay, so again, we will connect in a similar manner. Actually, I think I'll cut burst. So be careful, by the way, if any of you are using these older transistors. I got these from a shop that has components from the 60s, 70s still. And some of the transistors were pretty dirty. So it's really hard to solder some of the legs sometimes. So there we go. So similar to before, our emitter will connect to the strip designated for our plus 9 volt. Which in this case is the leftmost. So similar to before. That's right, we have a little more excess this time. Let's see really fast how difficult. I might do that later. For now, we can go ahead and cut this. Okay. So now, let's see what is remaining. Okay, so we can go ahead. I like to start with the diode, the cathode side connecting to the lugs. So I found that, it might be hard to see, but if we put the diode here, and here, then we want the leg of the diode, let's see here, ultimately to go here. For the cathode side, actually it's cathode side only. So here it would work fine. So I can put that, in this case, 1 over. So about right here. So where I wanted to put that, and then for example, we can take one of the pieces earlier, the legs that we cut, and we can solder that directly to the shield can here. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that now. So I'll need to update my layout because when I was working on it earlier, I was thinking mainly about just both sides of the diode, not cathode only, but it must be cathode only. So need to be mindful of that. So here, turn up to about 400. Here we go. Ooh. Shield can is hot, be careful. Okay, so we'll also have to get the cathode side on this shield can, which I will save for later. So for now, I'll go ahead and add the 82k ohm resistor to ground here, which also connects to the cathode side. So if we put in the 82k here, we should be able, yep, as you can see there, let's get the one here for ground. So for the anode side, I'll go ahead and, actually I'll wait a second because we can go ahead and add the 0.01 microfarad, which will go to our output jack. Tip. So we'll add the output there later. The wire going to our tip of our stereo jack. So then also we have the yes, this is a 102 to ground. So add that here. Okay. So here we have the, in this case, a lot of wire here. So we have the negative terminal of our 9-volt going to a 330 ohm resistor, and that will connect to the ring, which will act as a switch when we have nothing plugged in. So I'll go ahead and add that. Oops. Got that. So here is where I'm going to add the ground wire, which will go to the sleeve. And here is where I will add the, actually we could go ahead and do that now. I believe, let's see if we're missing anything. Oh, the cathode side connecting to this shield can. So I think what I'm going to do, just so it looks like a smiley face, I think I'm going to add some wire like this, and then I will connect in a similar manner one of the legs earlier that we cut to the shield can. So let's see here. I think I can do that here. Probably here. There we go. And let's just double check and make sure we have continuity. Between the lugs. Oh, that's right, we have to add the leg first. From here. Okay, now we can test for continuity between the 82K ohm resistor. Okay, good, good. And while we're at it, we might as well just check between our emitter here. Okay, that's good. So let's see what's remaining. So we can go ahead and cut this leg here. Yeah, like I mentioned, I'll fix that later. For now, so the 0.047 right here connected between ground and the positive 9 volt. You can add that here. Okay, we have that added. I believe, okay. Now we can add the battery. You want the positive here. Make sure we don't hit the ground. One right here. Here we go. Okay, so I believe, let's go ahead and clear some things out of the way here. Breadboard wise, I believe we can go ahead and set this aside. So we have variable capacitor, and we'll just look at the schematic for the remaining connections here. Okay, so we're going to put this in this way. Let's go ahead and keep it like that for now. So let's see here. We want this to connect to the antenna. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to prepare a blue wire for that. Given that it is connecting to the collector. I believe the original Sonic Wave used a white wire for that. And I'll go ahead and just add some solder here. And I want to try to keep this wire as short as possible. So what I might want to do later as well is actually move the transistor forward. Of course, when I decrease the height later, and in doing so, then I can connect the wire closer to the antenna. But for now, I'll just go ahead and connect it as such. Actually, before I do that, let's figure out so about right here. Here we go. So what I'll do is just go ahead and connect the wire and then finalize it later onto the antenna. Just make sure though. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we have that. And we want one for our output. So let's go ahead and see if I had brown. I believe the sonic wave used brown for the output. Have that going. Output's right here. I wish I put the battery a little bit away from the bottom there. And I could put the wires behind it. So maybe for future iterations. Or if it could fit in there now, I don't believe so. So I don't want to break anything. So for now, we'll just leave it as is, but that's something for you all to consider if you want to keep the wire snug. So the output one is here, the tip. I believe this gives us enough. Just double check before we move on. Seems okay. Seems fine. Let's see what else we have here. So the ring. So we want this to go to the ring. So let's go ahead, prepare that. For that, I'll just use white. Actually, I'll use black because we used black earlier for ground. And the sleeve will be, sorry, the ring will be here. So this should be fine lengthwise. I want to take this opportunity to thank my buddy in the US who sent me this logo. Huge guitar pick. And used, ooh, to be careful, I was touching the resistor. He was using a 3D printer to create that. And also, when I was working on building the Sonic Wave clone last week, I ran into an issue with the variable capacitors that I purchased where none of them were working. And I went to Akihabara to find some new variable capacitors. And yeah, I learned that not many shops are selling them. So I was fortunate enough to find the 20 picofarad on Amazon. Okay, so we need a ground now. Should be fine. Okay, so let's see what we're missing. We are missing a wire going to our variable capacitor. So let's go ahead and place the variable capacitor here. So like I mentioned before, we're going to glue this in. which we'll do a little bit later. For now, we'll just hold it in with the knob. Let's go ahead and do that now. Yeah. So just for the purpose of soldering, we could leave it as is. I'll definitely want to super glue that. And my wife recommended this super glue. I'm not too familiar, but apparently it's really good. We had to actually contact the staff to unlock a lock that was preventing customers from purchasing it, or at least taking it off the shelf. Okay, so I think I'll go ahead and let's see. Oh yeah, we were going to do the collector wire for the fixed oscillator. I'm going to go ahead and just solder that one at first. We'll figure it out this way. So I think to keep the wire short, we could bend these up as such. Okay, so I always like to make sure that I see at least one pin sticking out of the IFT, because in that case I know that that is pin number 2, and that helps me identify the primary from the side. What I'm seeing here though is that one of the pins is not soldered in, so just be careful in this case. So this should be soldered in here. Okay. So what I think I'll do is I'll use the wires from before and we'll test out this circuit now once more, and then we'll put it all together if everything sounds good. Okay, so I've gone ahead and removed the knob from the enclosure, and what I'm going to do is just wire everything up. So this will go to our variable capacitor. This will go to our antenna. Let's see. This goes to ground, so the sleeve. And we'll also be connecting the other end of the variable capacitor to the sleeve as well. Just carefully add those. So this is our output. We'll add that to the tip. And this goes to our ring. So we can plug this in. Let's go ahead and fire up the amp. Okay, not working immediately. Oh, there we go. So the volume is down a little bit. Okay, so everything sounds good. So I think what I'm going to do is super glue the variable capacitor onto the enclosure and then solder the remaining wires, and that should complete the clone. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and super glue variable capacitor. So like we did earlier, I'm going to bend the pins up. I'm also going to use painter's tape just to hold it in place. Just like that. So I'm just going to be very careful with the super glue. and this dries very quickly. So we should not have to wait too long. So I'll let that set and then come back to it here in a little bit. Okay, so the glue cured very quickly. I added some around the perimeter here as well. Added the knob. Everything seems fine. I'm just going to be careful for now. And what we're going to do is let's go ahead and solder everything. I'll actually go ahead and press the circuit down onto the mounts. Here we go. We're not hitting the variable capacitor. Pretty close to hitting that one leg. Wrap that around. Yikes. So I think also we could use some needle nose pliers and clamp that terminal down, but for now I'm just going to solder without clamping down. Okay. Here I'm going to go ahead and let's see what we want to do here. So this goes to ground. So that will go here. I think what I'm going to do, turn up the heat. Get some solder on there first. Turn it up a little bit more. turn it down. Oh, oops. That is the output. This is the ground. This goes to our output here. Tip, turn that up again. Being mindful of the enclosure. I just realized here we'll need one additional wire going from the variable capacitor here to ground. So let's keep that in mind. Okay, and finally we will add the one wire so again, as I mentioned, when you add your battery holder, you may want to add it a little bit away from the bottom of the case so you can fit your wires behind it. So for now this will do, maybe later I will move that depending on how difficult. The double-sided tape that I'm using is strong adhesive. So to be honest, I'm not quite sure what that means in terms of how difficult it is to remove. But anything is possible, so I think we can figure out something later. Here we go. Let's go and add that to ground. I think later I'll want to clamp this wire. So it looks like I just ran out of storage, so I'll have to hurry up here. Let's go ahead and solder that on. Here we go. So I think what we can do is now add the lid, or put the battery in, and test the unit. Okay, so I just turned on the amp and adjusted the knob and found a nice sweet spot. So I think we can say that we're almost done. There's one final touch. And as you can see on the bottom of the sonic wave, we have these rubber legs. So I think I'm going to add these. These are BP23. And as you can see, there's kind of a slant on this case that I'm using. So hoping that that will help. So we'll go ahead and add those to the bottom. So here's a look at the final product. And I removed the back panel, as you can see here, to show the inside. So there you have it. We successfully created a sonic wave theremin clone. I want to say thank you so much for watching the video. And if you have any questions about the clone or questions about Japan in general, feel free to ask at any point, and I'll do my best to answer. And to end, I just want to say thank you so much, and as always, take care.